Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down the threat of a severe weather outbreak later this week across the United States. I'll give you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, but let's first begin with what's happening across the United States right now, beginning with the Central Plains, which is actually where we've been seeing some severe storms that have been exploding over the last several hours, bringing large to very large hail, and even some damaging winds to areas like Oklahoma and even back through north central Texas. But elsewhere, we really don't have a whole lot going on. We have a very dominant ridge back over on the western side of the United States. This is keeping a large chunk of the United States dry, and as this continues to move off to the east, it will create much drier and warmer weather for a large chunk of the country over the next several days. Overall, though, back near the Gulf Coast, that is where we have some showers and storms ongoing, but nothing too concerning right now. But things are going to change over the next several days that'll potentially bring the threat for a severe weather outbreak later this week and even into the weekend. So beginning with Tuesday into Wednesday, we have a very dominant ridge that'll be in place across the United States, and we'll also have a threat for a small subtropical low back near the Gulf Coast. This could bring a threat for some isolated flooding and as well as some characteristics that a weak tropical storm would have, which includes the threat for gusty winds up to 50 miles per hour. But overall, that is not going to be too concerning. What is much more concerning is going to be what develops over the next few days back over in the northwest United States. That is where a trough could develop as we go closer to Thursday and to Friday, which this could very well become negatively tilted. And what negatively tilted troughs do is pull a ton of moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico. And if this is able to position itself quick enough back over near the Central Plains, this will be able to create the threat for maybe a severe weather outbreak on Friday. And then once we go through Friday into Saturday, that low pressure system continues to move off to the east, which again, with a negatively tilted trough, we very well could see severe weather all the way from Friday night through even Sunday. I wouldn't rule out that this brings the threat for severe weather through the East Coast, and then eventually this goes off to the north and east. Now, things are obviously still a bit uncertain. We could see some changes to the forecast, but I do want to show you what this actually could mean in terms of the threat if this is to happen, which does seem to be more likely than not at this point. So once we go through Tuesday into Wednesday, again, we have a very, very dry and warm week ahead across a large chunk of the United States, from the Great Plains back through the Midwest and into the Northeast. High pressure is dominating across the country. But once we go into Thursday and to Friday, notice this back down here on Wednesday, by the way, that's your little subtropical low. Might bring some rain along the Gulf Coast, but again, it's not too concerning. It will just bring a little bit of isolated flash flooding and some gusty winds. But going into Friday, things will become much more interesting. That is because a low pressure system will begin to develop over the Central Plains. And you might be thinking, this looks awfully similar to what we just saw back on Tuesday and the previous Friday with the tornado outbreak and the other severe weather outbreak we literally just had. Well, they aren't too far off from each other. The thing is, this one will obviously be different. In certain aspects, there will be a threat for severe weather, but it's not going to be the same. And you might notice here, once we go into Friday night, severe weather is going to be possible across the central and southern plains. A few issues though. One, how much moisture will there be? And two, will there be a cap, and how strong will it be? Those things are going to be very critical to where we see severe weather. That is why there is some uncertainty with where we'll see severe weather on Friday. But once we go into Saturday, that low pressure system moves through the Midwest. We'll be watching for a threat for severe weather, even back down through areas in the Midwest and Ohio Valley. Could even see severe weather as far south as the Mississippi Valley and the Dixie Alley on both Saturday and maybe even Sunday. Once we go into late Saturday into Sunday morning, that is when severe weather may start to shift a bit further off to the east, and that is when we could see more severe weather. But again, things really beyond even Friday or Saturday are still very uncertain, so stay tuned. We'll iron together those details with you over the next several days. Now, what does this mean for the threats, and where will we see the severe weather? Well, here's the dew points plotted with the wind, and this is going to give us an idea of where the highest dew points are going into Friday. And look at this going into Friday night into Saturday. Highest dew points along a frontal boundary will be back through the Central Plains and even into areas like North Texas. This is where I have the highest concern right now for severe weather on Friday night. And you can eventually see going into Friday night and Saturday morning, the highest humidity levels will actually be back through Oklahoma and North Texas. If there is not a cap in place down here, which right now the European model is indicating that there will be, then this is the region of most significant severe weather. However, again, things may change as we get closer, and then really the big question is, will there be a cap? We'll keep you posted with the latest details there. And as this storm system progresses to the east, we'll be watching for severe weather. Could even exist as far north as Michigan, but for right now, the highest dew points are going to probably be down just to the south of Indiana and Ohio. That means the highest risk of severe weather will probably reside back through the Dixie Alley and maybe even into the lower Mississippi Valley. Once we go into Sunday, dew points could actually stretch into the low 60s as far north as New York, but again, things are still a bit uncertain that far out, so we'll keep you posted with the latest details there. In terms of the instability, this is like putting gasoline into a vehicle, but this is what helps to fuel severe thunderstorms. Really, the biggest concern for severe weather right now with the instability values is down here into the North Texas and as well as into Oklahoma. That is where I think the greatest threat for severe weather will likely exist if there is no cap. Now, if there is a cap, I think we'll still be watching for at least a marginal or slight risk of severe weather back through areas even in maybe the Midwest and back through the Central Plains, but the threat will be a bit lower up there due to the fact instability values will also be lower. And then there will still be enough instability for severe weather as far north as Michigan going even into Sunday, or Saturday, excuse me, and eventually going into Sunday. There might still be enough instability for some severe weather continuing through areas in New York. But regardless, there will at least be some rain of some sort. Now, in terms of the low-level jet, this is what helps to rotate supercells. Will we see a tornado risk with this? Well, overall, I have some good news for you. This does not look to be like a full-blown tornado outbreak. There will be enough of a low-level jet for an isolated tornado or two, but the threat of numerous tornadoes, strong long-track tornadoes, is very low at this time. Obviously, things could change as we get closer, but overall, we're looking at not too bad of a tornado risk. This would probably be more of a damaging wind component with any severe storms that develop, but again, any discrete supercells will have an increased potential for a tornado. Now, I mentioned there is a subtropical storm that could develop in the Gulf of Mexico over the next few days. Here's what it looks like in the motion. Wednesday morning is when this thing actually becomes organized. Now, keep in mind, this will not be a tropical storm, but it will be subtropical. What that does mean is that there will be some characteristics of a tropical storm, including the potential for flooding rain and as well as some gusty winds, but we're not looking at exactly a tropical storm with a ton of storm surge. And even through Thursday, that low pressure system will finally come inland to Louisiana, and it weakens out pretty quickly. We might still have a little bit of shower and storm activity before that finally goes into the Atlantic Ocean by late Friday night. In terms of wind gusts, we could get upwards of 45 to 50 miles per hour near New Orleans, so just keep that in mind. Again, just take the proper precautions just in case there's some gusty winds there. Now, in terms of the temperatures, we're going to get really, really warm this week. This is Wednesday's forecasted high temperatures. We're looking at areas upwards of the upper 80s across the Central Plains. That is near record-breaking for a lot of areas, and even in the Midwest, upper 70s and low 80s for high temperatures. It is about to get very warm. In terms of the temperature anomalies, this is what gives us an idea of temperatures being above or below average. Overall, above average temperatures across the Midwest and as well as the Northeast. Cooler temperatures will come from behind that next low pressure system once we go into the weekend. So some cooler air will finally come back, more spring-like for those in the Midwest. And as you know, there are no Arctic blasts in sight here across the United States, but nice and cooler weather will be ahead soon. Make sure to like the video and subscribe if you've not already. This forecast is brought to you by Platinum Contracting.